Are we,
Yeah, really rolling.
oh, rolling?
Yeah.
Terry, it's a real honor,
Nice to meet you.
officially here at ATP, to see you. This is, I think this is a good example. I think your performance and your presence here is an excellent example of what makes ATP brilliant, and that, you know, groups like Animal Collective can bring together such disparate sort of styles of music, and it all it collages very well, don't you think?
Yeah, well, it's an overall experience.
It is an overall experience.
Yeah.
I think one memory I'll have from this one, for sure, is standing next to Tony Conrad watching Terry Riley.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
I thought that was really amazing.
Tony's performance brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah?
Too, yeah.
I've seen Tony quite a lot, and he's done quite a lot of stuff in Atlanta. I'm from Atlanta. I'm from Athens,
Yeah.
Georgia,
Oh, are
originally.
you?
but
Yeah.
I moved.
Coleman Barks.
Yeah.
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 And in Atlanta, you know, we have a place called the iDrum.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've
I
ever.
haven't been to Atlanta for many years now.
Yeah.
The play is, I think, about 8 or 9 years.
iDrum is an amazing space. And Tony's done a bunch of stuff there with like the Table of the Elements festivals and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But I saw Tony's videos that he makes.
Yeah, the Flicker is one of the greatest.
Flicker's
films ever
amazing,
made,
but he did some of his like VHS comedy sort of stuff. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
The man is brilliant.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to ask you, it's amazing that you have your son performing with you. When did you
Yeah.
guys start performing together?
Well, you know, it's amazing that.
I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'm warm. So
Yeah.
I'm having all kinds of body temperature issues here because
Well, it's- yeah.
I go outside and I'm freezing. And
You live in California.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, I live
it's a
in-
little bit
yeah.
of a shock, huh?
Yeah.
I came from Atlanta. It was 90 degrees when I left. I got here and it was drizzling and 50, and I was just like,
Well, the plane ride then too is.
oh, yeah, the dryness.
But anyway, yeah, Gan, my son, you know, he blossomed kind of early as an improvising musician.
I wonder why.
And you know, I have no idea. I tried to teach him music, and of course, he totally resisted that.
Well,
You know, and he said, you know, whenever I would try to teach him on the piano, he'd say, no, that's all wrong. But then he won a guitar in a raffle at a music store.
really?
Yeah, and once he got the guitar, he took off, and he just went into his room, and you know, I didn't see him again for a couple of years.
Does he use, you know, one thing about your music that I've always been inspired by is the way that you use different scales
Mm-hmm.
and different, you know, I'm not by any means like qualified to analyze it with music theory or anything. I don't know anything about it, but it doesn't sound Western.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know, I started studying Indian classical music in 1970.
Yeah,
with Pandit Pranad.
Yeah.
And I lived in India for a long time, and you know, it's probably a bigger part of my tradition than anything else, because I really studied it the most intensely of any music. So that's because in India, you know, is the master of different melodic scales. I mean, they just have hundreds of them.
Was that influential on stuff like reed streams, or was reed streams and like keyboard studies?
Reed Steeds was before.
Before.
Yeah, I those are the late '60s.
And
But I was headed
Dorian
that way. Dorian Reeds.
Dorian Reeds, yeah. The first.
I was headed in that direction already. You know,
Towards it.
So when I met Pandit Pranath, I realized this was the completion of a cycle. I had to go, then continue learning from him.
Well, one thing about Indian music and Indian classical music and like the ragas and stuff that I see even present in your earlier work, not so much in that it mimics that, but the first record of yours I got was Keyboard Studies.
Yeah.
I think it was
That was
BYG.
the first one I ever made. Oh, that was made by somebody else. Yeah, the first one I ever made of my own playing was also the Keyboard Studies on Massart.
Yeah, no, okay. That is,
1966. Yeah.
And it's similar to reed streams, but
Right.
you know, it is on the piano. When I listened to that music, I remember I bought it at my friend Todd Plaharsky runs a fantastic record store in Athens called Low Yo-Yo Stuff, after the Captain Beefheart song.
Yeah.
And I first started going to his store when I was like 9 or 10, and so he kind of got me into really odd things for a 9 or 10-year-old to be listening to early on.
Right.
But I think I'd gotten my driver's license. I was so I must have been 16 or 17 years old, and he suggested, he was like, you know Terry Riley, and I was like, well, I got Rainbow and Curved Air, which I want to ask you a bit about in a minute, but I'd had that one, and he was like, well, you really should listen to this. It's a lot more minimal, but it's I think it'll be up your alley, and so I got it, and I was living in Marietta, which is a suburb of Atlanta, but I was driving home from Athens. I'd go to Athens on the weekends and get stoned and buy records, and then drive home a little stoned, which I don't recommend. It's not appropriate behavior. But I was a little stoned. Not that that's necessary to appreciate your amazing music. And there was an intense thunderstorm suddenly at night, which isn't very common. I mean, I'm sure it's common, but it's not. It seemed odd because usually in the summer in Atlanta, in the southeast, our thunderstorms come in the afternoons, and then the nights are sort of wet and damp, and there's the cicadas and stuff. But there's this very long and straight road that goes from Athens to Atlanta. It's called 316. It's just this. It's honestly, you couldn't cut a straighter line. And I was driving, listening to keyboard studies. A little bit altered, and this, watching the lightning was like sort of like heat lightning. So it was sort of, and it was just driving this straight line. And I swear to you, it's about 30 minutes long, the recording, right?
Yeah, probably not quite because it was an LP.
20, yeah. One side of LP, right?
Yeah, 20 probably.
Well, must have been 25. It was a longer piece, but I remember when it ended, I was like, no. And like I couldn't let it end, so I started it over. And the great thing about that, I mean, it does have a sort of evolving. It's almost as if the harmonics. And I don't know if that's in the liner notes or if that's like if I'm just saying something that's already common knowledge about it. But just as a listener that had no knowledge of it in advance, it seems like using repetition. You created an evolving sort of shaft of sound that it was almost like it predates, but it was almost like electronic music. The way that filters are used, and there was no synthesizers used.
I don't know which recording if you're talking about the one I made, it was made with a harmonium and a vacuum cleaner motor. So there are no electronics.
Really? The one it might have been the other one, then it might be the BYG. It was definitely piano.
Yeah. No, this one was, the first one was harmonium.
So the harmonium and the vacuum...
With the motor, the bellows was driven with the vacuum cleaner.
Was that at all... Did that have to do with like Lamont Young and
that one. Well, I was playing with Lamont Young, of course, in those days too. But it was a little different than what Lamont was doing because I was really starting to get into these kind of mobile, revolving mobile... repeated pattern cycles. And Lamont was into the straight line and follow it. And I did. And Tony was in the band. And Tony Conrad. I was playing with Tony and John Cale,
Angus
Lamont,
McLeese,
and Angus McLeese in those days.
Angus apparently just had a
show in New York.
That a lot of my friends attended and said it was quite.
I saw that.
Yeah, was it good?
I didn't see the show. I saw that it happened because I got interviewed about that.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about, revisiting the piano version, somebody else doing your keyboard studies. Still, I think it kind of remains the same that I'm sure with the harmonium stuff as well, there is a sort of harmonic shift that comes from repetition over a while, and it could be it could be your ears becoming tuned to different things that you're listening to?
Well, I got started, before I was trying to do this on instruments, I was making tape loops. That was the way I got started. And I'd listen to the tape.
Poppy No Good?
Even before that, I was working with a dancer called Anna Halpern out in California, so I was making tape loops for her dance company. And what I'd noticed is that as the loop would progress, and I'd listen to them for hours deciding where to cut them or change them, I'd keep hearing them change, and even though it was just the same loop, it wasn't. It was a mechanical process. So then I realized in live performance, if you had repetition and you kept doing it, the music would change. You would hear it as differently every time that pattern came around.
Do you think computers and that kind of technology and sampling, do you think that kind of is affecting the ability to have that sort of organic shift?
Well, it shouldn't, but I mean, the thing is that the technology kept making it easier and easier to do. At the beginning, what I first used was tape loops and tape delays, head gap delay. Bop bop kind of delay.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, the long sequences of loops I used to play and intricately work out between each hand. You just run a couple of. You can do it on.
You can do it with two samplers.
Or you can do it in Logic. Immediately. Programs.
Does that sort of eliminate the compositional spark or the sort of like happy accidents? Do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it. I mean, for me, I still wanted to do it live. I still like the thing of what happens in your body when you're working with different rhythms and different parts of your body are shifting it.
Yeah.
And you're kind of let
There's
it go.
that like odd
Then you're not a
phasing.
You are a kind of machine. You're a meat machine, but you're not a. You're not.
You're not quantizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's different. So I always think the live part is becomes the most interesting part for me.
A Rainbow in Curved Air is probably a record that a lot of people know you best by, maybe. I mean, it was kind of a record that received a lot of like wide attention and sparked sort of wider acceptance of new music, right?
Yeah, it was one of the first kind of like hits, in this.
Greatest hits of exactly.
Yeah.
And what was your intention with making records like that? And the record you made with John Cale, the Church of Anthrax, did you feel like there might be did you guys feel like you were pursuing a sort of fusion of like the more avant-garde things that were happening in like Mills and with like the Once group and stuff like that, and then obviously pop groups like Velvet Underground, who are making 3-minute and 4-minute songs intercut with the longer pieces. Did it feel like I don't know, did it feel like a widening sort of?
Well, there was a possibility, because we were recording, John and I both at that time, for CBS. The story was that CBS asked me to make 3 records. First we made NC, that was before Rainbow Curved Air, with the group from Buffalo. And then he asked me to make a solo album, so I was playing Rainbow and Curved Air in concerts. But at the same time, we just were getting 4-track recorders at CBS. And then when I came into the session to do it, they suddenly wheeled in an 8-track machine. Well, that blew everybody's mind.
Yeah.
I mean, now 8 tracks doesn't mean anything to anybody. But
I have an 8-track recorder in my bag that's operated with batteries and has 2 condenser microphones and requires no cables. I can record like pristine audio quality 8-track, multi-tracking.
It was a
anywhere.
thing like a tower that you had to wheel in.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's insane.
And the tape was 2-inch tape, and so everybody was blown away. That, okay, I think Rainbow was the first 8-track recording made at CBS, and so the piece was really because of that tape recorder. Because I used to play it live with just 4 channels.
Yeah.
2 channels each hand, and then 2 live delays on each hand. So Rainbow, and then I could feed in more stuff, and then I actually ended up overlaying that by overdubbing. So it was the first time of taking a piece with multiple patterns and kind of building it up into many layers.
Yeah.
So it was
Which now, that kind of brings us to today. Do you see as you've walked around the festival, I'm sure, have you noticed how much a lot of the new wave seems to be harkening back to that, and to that, specifically that record? And
yeah, but it's even I think a bigger thing than that, and it's the that these things are very basic kind of archetypes in music. They go back millennia.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I just came from Kyra Arby's concert, and I'm thinking of the grooves that she sets up. There's the basis, there's the root of everything we all do. It comes from these ancient cultures, India and Africa, and the repetition, the idea has that built into it, but it harkens back to older forms. I think that's what gets people excited and causes them. So personality is different. Like you and I come along and work with it, but we're just part of the
bigger picture.
The bigger picture, and we're still trying to tie into that. I feel.
Yeah.
And I feel the people that are most successful are the ones that really are aware of that in some way, if not theoretically or intellectually, in a heart way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you interested in science fiction?
Marginally.
Marginally?
Yeah. I don't read science fiction.
Neither do I, but are you interested in it?
Yes.
It's more like something you're
Yeah.
interested in than you actually engage in.
Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time.
I always imagine that A Rainbow in Curved Air is like the quintessential science fiction record.
Well, I'm interested in cosmology, which is
Cosmology,
probably the
yeah.
same thing in a certain way. Our bigger home is bigger than here
Yeah.
on Earth. So I like to imagine. I did a piece for Kronos Quartet a few years ago called Sun Rings, and I worked with NASA and got sounds that were recorded by all the Voyager and Explorer and all the.
Yeah, those are,
So I used those sounds in the piece, and when I was building that piece, I really got a feeling of living out on Saturn and
Yeah.
Uranus.
It's sort of,
Because I was hearing sounds that they would recorded there, and I was
Yeah.
trying to imagine those environments.
it is, this Voyager recordings are really something else. I used to put those on when I'd had like really bad anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
I put them on right before I would go to bed and just listen to them, and
Yeah.
I find them therapeutic.
Well, there's all kinds of sounds out there. That's what's so amazing. There's some
Speak-
melodies, melodic stuff.
Yeah.
There's repeated patterns. There's pulses.
Pulses,
There's
yeah.
really gritty, scary
Yeah.
rips and
Frequencies sort of like a granular.
star collision sounds.
Yeah. Speaking of therapeutic, you worked with Pauline Alvaros?
Well, Paul and I go back quite a long time. We met in the 50s, and we were both students at San Francisco State. Yeah, we've done concerts together over the years, kept in touch.
And you know about, do you have any thoughts on some of the stuff she's been writing about music as therapy, like deep listening, and do you see some of that in your own work?
No, Pauline is really focused on that. I don't focus on that because I feel it's a byproduct of our work. If we succeed as musicians,
Yeah.
people might feel good.
Yeah.
They should,
Well, that goes for rock music.
Like I just came from Kyra's concert. I felt uplifted. I walked out of there. And,
That's great.
Like she took me up.
That's great.
Tiramisu. She was great. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So I don't think. I mean, I really think that Pauline's work is great because she makes people start thinking about that. And a lot of people don't think about sitting down and actually listening to sounds or music. John Cage did that. I mean, he was trying to get people to be aware of their environment, the sounds around them, and hear them as organized parts of their sonic experience.
Yeah.
That you can actually connect birds and other things that are happening around you and
Yeah.
actually hear it as a sound, piece. And Pauline, I think, is part of that tradition.
Have there been any other things at the festival this weekend that have drawn your attention?
I liked your thing.
Thank you.
The last A minor, the one piece that has the A minor, C. Now you did that a little bit, very much like what Kyra is doing, is taking one element like that, and finally the space starts expanding inside that element, and you start hearing deeply inside it.
Yeah.
I like things like that.
I've always enjoyed setting up a loop and then exploring within it,
Yeah.
and letting it expand. But I think a lot of that comes from listening to your records. So
Well,
It's-
we all get it from somebody.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have gotten it from you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Terry.
It was very nice to have this chat.
Yeah, very, very fun for me.